Okay, so I've decided that I'd like to make a little accountability video. I was thinking recently, I haven't uploaded any videos for my channel in quite some time, and maybe it's nice to have an update and some of the things I've been thinking about recently that I think will help other people too. Um, I hope it could help someone at least. So, first, I want to start with um, some ideas of things that I would do differently as a sound designer now in 2025. So I started this journey sound designing at the beginning of 2016 was when I kind of started, and then 2017 was when I started freelancing. So the last video I uploaded, I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago now, which was like a focus on game dev. Just actually, it was geared towards general game devs working with sound designers. This video, I think, is going to be more aimed at the sound designers themselves, right? So, um, whoops. Yeah, that said, um, yeah, some things I would do differently now. So when I started my journey, something I would do often is I basically what I did, right, was I spent a lot of money in the beginning of my career on sound libraries. Now, I don't think that that's terrible in the sense that I got the ear training done really well from like from an early point in my career. So I spent a lot of time listening to things that I would pull from libraries and like and think, okay, so I can layer this or I can change it, but this is the kind of quality of sound that I'm going for. So I think ear training wise, it's still a good muscle to work, but I would very much change it now. One thing I'll say about my journey is that in 2016, and earlier than that, even finding knowledge about how to do these things was very kind of hit and miss. It was kind of a lot of it was like very like kind of secretive. Like audio has always kind of been considered the black box, and it was almost considered like more of the black box. So that said, like this process I mentioned of using sound libraries, it's like what I would suggest to younger sound designers that are starting now is I would actually not do that at all. In fact, I would only rely on library source that you can get for free in the beginning. I'm not saying no, never buy a library, but I'm saying what you should do actually is get a library get one sound that you like from a library and drop it onto a track in your DAW and start thinking about how you can deconstruct and create that sound again from the start. I don't think doing libraries or doing library pulls is in and of itself is the worst thing in the world, but I would say that part of what I'm trying to get you to think about is to not stifle yourself creatively. Like I reached a point where I thought, okay, I need to break out of this and figure out other ways of creating sounds. So recording your own sounds, I think it's easy to skip it over. And the reason I didn't do much of it myself in the beginning was because, excuse me, I thought that getting into the field of, you know, field recording for sounds, I thought that it was a bit unattainable in the sense that it was quite expensive before, but now, I mean, you can get something like this that I got not long ago. So I'm presently in the UK, and this costed me 80 quid. The Zoom H1N, perfectly usable device. 80 pounds, whatever that is for Americans and Canadians, but perfectly usable device. Built-in microphones on it. Maybe not the best sounding. It's not. It doesn't have the best signal to noise ratio, but it's perfectly usable to get started with. You can get a good result. And then another thing I picked up alongside that are a pair of clippy microphones from Mic Booster. They look exactly like this. So you can pair something like this, which is a lavalier microphone set, with a nice signal to noise ratio with a recorder like I just showed you here in the Zoom, and that would be perfectly fine. That'd be enough to get you started. So these all costed about £100. So if you do the math, it's like it's relatively inexpensive to get started, like enough to just get going. And then the amount of money that I spent on that to create, basically do a lot of your own recording and editing of your own sounds is going to get you a lot further than, potentially spending thousands on libraries that can be helpful too. But this is the way I would go if I were to redo it from the start. I would say maybe not take the path that I particularly took with this. Yeah. So anyways, What else can I talk about with this? So I would say source generation is another way of looking at this. Like recording is one angle. Like I mentioned, there's so many resources out there for you to use now that I personally didn't have access to when I got started. So just do a cursory YouTube search. Sound design techniques, sound design source generation. There's plenty of videos on creating sounds out of signal chains, right? So taking whatever sounds you do have in whatever free library you might have, or the sounds you recorded, and just running them through a bunch of signal chains and seeing what you can get. You can get on the output that might inspire you, because they may be strange sounds that you don't exactly know where you would use them, but the point is you're creating stuff that's inspiring to you that you like, right? So you do this process, you'll do it for a while until you come up with stuff that you like, but they'll be completely your own curated sounds, not sounds that came out of a library, and you'll be off to a better start for it. Like recording, building your sounds from that, doing source generation with like signal changes, and as I suggest, all these things eventually are going to make you a stronger sound design for it. So I'd recommend doing that. What I mean by signal chains, like create 5 or 6 signal chains. One of them is maybe transient shaper heavy. One of them is maybe phaser heavy. There's plenty of free plugins out there that you can use with whatever DAW you use. If it's Pro Tools, Reaper, whatever, you can get Nelda Productions plugins, run things through some frequency shifting, run things through some automation, right? Like make sure that you automate your plugins with an LFO, for example, right? It's like, I guess what I'm getting at is like random LFO generations so that you can just see what kind of interesting results that you got to get on the output. You'll definitely come up with something cool, and then you can save it back to your own library. So these are things I would do now if I were to redo it, right? So this is like, I want to espouse this. I'm hoping it's good advice for somebody who's newer at sound design, right? Maybe you just come out of school. You're looking for the next steps. Start making sounds. Start making lots of sounds. Okay. So I also want to talk about some insights, like personal things that I've learned in my development recently that I'm hoping will be helpful. So things like, I'm not sponsored by anybody, not Mic Booster or anything else like that, but I do have some book recommendations I want to talk about that I think are going to help because they've personally helped me a lot. One of them is this great book right here called Leading with Sound by Rob Bridgett. Just there. He talks about a couple of concepts in here that are more on the conceptual side and the philosophical side of creating sound rather than the technical. So things that are just good mindsets to adopt and approach things with. So I'll give some examples. Here's one that will apply to working with indie devs if you ever have like clients, game developer clients in the freelance space. He talks about this really cool idea of quality levels to your sound design. So ask an artist when they work on an indie game, when they're creating visual art, that is a process typically, right? Usually the game isn't going to look the same as it does at release stage as it looked in pre-production, right? So I would say you should approach your sound design with the same idea, the same methodology in mind, right? Like the game is not going to sound as it does on release or post-release as it did during the pre-production. So you basically work through this idea of quality levels, right? Here's level 1 quality of sounds, level 2. It puts a little bit less pressure on you as the sound designer to create your best assets right out of the gate. But of course, this varies a lot. It depends, right? You got to read the room and talk to the developer. If the developer is, if everything is riding on this game shipping at a very high quality level because you have to pick up a publisher to fund the rest of it or something, there may not be room for the developer to want to work on a concepting phase for audio, right? They may just tell you we need just final sounds. It can happen, right? But I think it's smart as an idea to present this idea to them, right? Like talk to them, like I said, read the room, feel out how early you are in the development stage. Like, is it appropriate? Can you go for this approach? Maybe some developers don't want to spend money on like various iterations of sound, but it's going to be all the better in the end for them anyways, because treat it the same way as visual art, right? Those AAA games didn't get the best sounding result they did in the end because they slammed a bunch of sounds in the game at the last minute. It can happen, but it's also happened the other way I've just suggested. So it's a good idea nonetheless to play around with. And just one other point I'm going to touch on that's in his novel is this idea of leading with music. I believe it was in that chapter. I'm not going to talk about the entire novel, but there's a couple of key learnings I picked up recently. One of them was that. The other one was this idea with leading with music. So music, no matter how good it is, if you're just going for a wall-to-wall music approach in whatever game you're working on, I think that he makes a strong point that any music, no matter how good the melody or whatever, it could lose its impact and its power just because it starts to turn into like a constant noise. We're just hearing it all the time. So creating games where music is allowed to kind of like come in and then leave, and come in when it's appropriate, like strengthens its impact. I think it could go for any quality, any category of sound, whether it's voice or sound, but especially true for music. Whereas in the past, it seemed like music has to have general coverage all the time. It depends on the genre of the game too. I've personally worked on arcade games that did have a constant music soundtrack, but maybe challenge that idea, right? Like maybe try something else, just try something different. And the next book idea I want to talk about, or book that I've read that I think has really helped me on my journey as of recently, last couple of years, is a book called Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. This is a fantastic, fantastic read. So in the past, when I've personally been, maybe if I felt slighted when I worked with a developer because they didn't want to make the most ambitious sound in their game, or they didn't have the bandwidth for that or the time for that, rather than looking at it as a reflection of me and my skill sets, I think it's better to see that, not every particular project you may ever work on or game is going to define you as a creative, define you as a person, as a sound designer. It's okay to like put things out there and then just see where they land or move on to the next thing. Take what you learn and, maybe, that sort of thing, right? Like don't have too much ego around it. Everybody feels something in relation to sound. Probably almost everybody that can hear. People feel something when it comes to sound, so therefore everybody is more than welcome to chime in on their thoughts and their feedback and their critiques. And you as a sound designer, you should take all of it on board. I'm not saying that you should. You can still be discerning. You can know you can be discerning in terms of like valuing what feedback matters the most in what context, but you should hear everybody out at least. Like this is just when it comes to ego. And I'm sharing a personal story of like I said, feeling maybe not the greatest, that a developer wanted to not do the best job with audio, right? And then how that would impact and reflect on me and my reputation, when in the end that might have more to say about the developer, right? It's just a be open to feedback of all kinds from other sound designers who are below your level and above your level. Just be open to everybody's feedback. People will have ideas that you didn't even think of if you just hear people out, right? Really great, solid read. Recommendation. Ego is the Enemy. It probably won't help you very much anywhere else in your life, so I'm just suggesting that now and from personal experience. Yeah, other than that, all I can say is I wish the best forward for everyone in 2025. I think it's been a really tough year for us, especially those of us who have been through the layoff situation. And like last year, I did personally, but others as well. And just wanted to give a little update. Like I say, I think it's been a couple of years now since I last put up one of these videos. So I'm treating it a bit like an accountability video, a little bit like an update or vlog of sorts into my journey. If you got this far, thanks for hearing me out. What have I been up to lately? I just released a sound library of a Ford Mustang, a 2021 convertible Ford Mustang. I think it's the EcoBoost model. Me and my friend Diego recorded this car out in California just at the end of last year. So I've just put that up online on Gumroad at the moment. So we've just released that, and that's kind of my update for the beginning of the year. But yeah, other than that, that's it. Keep working on sound design. Keep growing as sound designers, as people. Yeah, thank you very much for checking this out. Hopefully at some stage I'll be able to kind of do more updates, right? Awesome. Thank you very much. Take care.